I'll call to order the Ascension Parish Council meeting for Thursday, February 20th. If everyone would please stand for the prayer and the pledge given by our own Ken Dawson.
Let us pray. Father, as we come tonight, we again give you glory and praise and thank you for all the blessings that you bestowed upon us. Sometimes the blessing, oh God, that we do not take time to give you thanks for what you've done for us. God, we ask for your guidance on tonight's meeting, that you give us the wisdom, oh God, to handle the people's business, oh God, with the trust that they placed in us. And Father, we pray for the situation with the weather, because, oh God, there have been warnings about tornadoes in the area. We ask that you protect the citizens of Ascension and the surrounding areas, oh God, from all hurt, all harm, all devastation. We thank you for the blessing that you've given us again, and thank you for all that you've done in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, Ken. Roll call, Madam Secretary. Please note that Councilwoman Casso, Councilman Melanson, Councilman Johnson are absent and working. Shares additions. I would like to note that we are going to be pulling items 13, 14, and 16 from the agenda. Do some additional information we need on those before moving forward. And number 4 is a public comment sign-in period reminder. If you wish to speak, please sign up a comment card, and you'll have 3 minutes. And with that, we'll move into our presentations from Mujo Architects.
Good evening, y'all. I'd like to present to you guys where we are today on the new Ascension Parish Governmental Complex. Put the board up. There. Talk here. I can talk here. Okay, we at this point, as you can see, we're about complete with the demolition of the existing East Ascension Hospital. We're within 2 to 3 weeks of having the demo contractor substantially complete with that project. What you have on the screen now is the list of participants. It's us as the lead architects and all of the engineers involved with the project. What's up now is a site plan that, as you can see, the yellow is the visitor parking. That's all of the parking, or for the majority, most of the parking remains. We did add some additional parking to the rear of the building, which works with the new entrances to the new building. The red parking is all of the employee parking. We have 2 buildings remaining on the site. That's the Cairo Clinic on the right in the taupe color, and the maintenance building in the rear. And in the front, you can see the blue color is the existing pond, and the dark hatch between the pond and the building is where we're proposing to connect the existing pond to the footing, which we applied a deep foundation footing at that point to connect the pond to the new building. And now I'll go through the departments that will be involved with the new building. The first slide is the main entry in the lobby area. Second slide is a conference center that has 2 large meeting spaces that can be subdivided into one larger space. It has 2 medium conference rooms as well as 2 smaller conference rooms. And in the lobby, you can also see we have 2 public restrooms. On the left, you enter on the left into the planning and development side. So we have all of those offices together in that space. Then in the rear, which is adjacent to the conference center, is the TV studio. And on the right of that is finance. Then it takes you to the Human Resources Department and Purchasing. In the front right corner is grants. And we, at sort of towards the end of the design period, we were authorized to go ahead and include IT. We had some available space to include them into the building as well. We have legal, administration, and council secretaries. There's mechanical spaces, server rooms, and employee restrooms that are spread among the spaces that are in the circulation corridors. And we'll take you to the overall building rendering as well as the main lobby entrance renderings. And here's a close-up of the main entrance going into the lobby from the visitor parking area. And these are a couple of other interior one interior rendering of the administration break room. And to that break room, there's an outdoor seating space that's connected to the existing pine. And that's the bottom left slide.
Got one question, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Councilman Lambert?
Yeah, the conference center, is that absolutely going to be the council chambers where we're going to have the meetings? Or is that going to be something different added to it?
The conference center, when we originally designed it, we were under the impression that the existing conference or council chambers would remain here. So we utilize those spaces for internal employee meeting spaces, training rooms. So the overall large conference room, when it's opened up, the partition wall would be open, wouldn't quite be as large as this space. So, but it could technically be converted into a council chambers.
I know the judges have been after this particular courtroom they're running out of space also, so I thought while we were building, we was looking at that.
I think that may have been something that came up towards the end of the design
Okay.
period, and we looked at it, and Mr. Martinez, did you want to?
Yeah, we met with the judges, and it's certainly something that they would like to see. At some point, they would like to take this over as a courtroom, but there's a lot of steps that would need to be taken before they create another judgeship here. And, you know, that may be 3, 4, 5 years down the road, and we talked about adding and making it, putting the meeting room there, but we didn't want to go ahead and change the plans now, but we do have ample space in that facility to do that, and then we could do, if we have room to add on, it's built to add on to. If we needed to, we could add some meeting rooms out and convert that into a meeting room for the council.
Thank you, sir.
Right, and also, once you do a setup like this, it sort of fixes that space for a single purpose. So that was a reason why maybe not to do it quite yet until it's a forced situation.
Understand. Thank you.
Councilman Satterley?
Yes, sir, and thank you for your presentation. The yellow parking area, is it adequate for, tell me how was it determined? I didn't count the number of spaces, but I understand the purpose.
How was the parking?
Yeah, how did you come up with the number of parking spaces?
The total parking spaces that was there was adequate for the 75,000 square foot roughly of the existing hospital. So we're actually less than half, or yeah, a little less than half of that square footage. So we're well over what parking spaces would be required. And employee spaces, we've got well over what we need for employee, just doing the counts. We're estimating under 100 people, employees in the building for what the original setup would be.
Okay, and a follow-up question, the council secretary space, is that a similar square footage as they have right now existing in this building? A little bit more? It does not open into the conference section, which we just discussed may one day depending on the judges and all, actually be where we'd hold these meetings.
It
Seems
could
to-
very well easily be done. 'Cause
Well, rather than retrofit it, I'm wondering why there wouldn't be a doorway or something between that conference area into the secretarial office,
well,
which could be locked, obviously, when the secretaries need to do so, but when they need to bring materials and all, and if we were to meet there to us, it seems like it'd just be a wise idea.
we could easily put a door, but we'd have to reconfigure the office spaces now. We'd have to put basically a corridor.
But the little map doesn't look like that. I'm not an architect, by the way, but it looks like you could easily put a door in.
The intention, if we did had to convert the space to the council chamber, is we would have to do some reworking of the room to create a master control room for our televised portion. And at that point in time, we could rework that wall to add that area. And I just wanted to add on the council secretary's area, we're providing meeting space as well as an office for the chair of the council, or an office space that would work for any of the councilmen or councilwomen to be able to come and have do business in that space. So it's actually quite a bit more room than they have now in the current facilities.
Councilman Clouat?
Yeah, do we, based on the total design of the complex, do we have expansion capabilities kind of mapped in, or
Do we have what?
expansion capabilities mapped in?
We do have a master plan, so to speak, of additional spaces that could be added on, 2 additional spaces in the rear of the building. There's a lot of green space that's left back there between the maintenance building and the parking back there and the actual footprint of our new building. So there's two spaces that are sort of planned out for future expansion. There's a third space across the driveway to the east that could be a third freestanding separate building over there.
Yes, Mr. President.
Mr. President?
In the back buildings, basically what we want to do is create a store per se, to whereas all of our supplies and stuff, they can go, we'll put an inventory there, we'll have a check and balance system. We'll go through a scanner every time something's checked out, or they order stuff for a week or so. Each department, they'll get it from there, they'll order it, and we'll deliver it from there, and that way we can have a real tight watch over all of our supplies, what goes in and what comes, what we're buying and what goes out, and making sure that we watching inventory. So, and the other part of it would be the back. This is the back space. We would use it for storage for our records. Right now, we have a rent space to put records in, but this would give us a facility on that we own, that we can put these climatized put our records in. We have to keep them for so many years.
Councilman Shakespeare?
Yes, appreciate the job y'all doing. And obviously a lot of thought has been going into this. And one of the things I know everybody's, concerned about future expansion and about, possibility of putting the council meeting rooms back there. I was just looking, and normally what you would do, if we do expand to the rear, people would still enter probably from the front lobby, and
Correct.
there's not really a large corridor to get people from the front to the back. I'm not sure, I'm just looking from the drawings at the corridor on the left. I would think that would be where you would go. Right now, it looks
There's
to be.
one on the left and the right that we have the expansion areas in line with, so that corridors would continue on through.
And that would be adequate for the public to go through traffic, to go to
Yes,
a
sir.
meeting room?
These corridors are, the smallest corridors are 6 foot wide, I believe, and the larger ones are 7 foot wide. So they're not little narrow hallways.
I mean, that would be the only thing I would be looking at, because that's usually what hinders future expansion, is the corridor to get there, and people start getting cramped up, and I know from the school system and as they go. So that's just throwing that out for savoring. I think we're meeting our needs, and looking forward to seeing it get done, so.
Councilman Turner?
This is a quick question. Is there any particular reason why we didn't just build a council chambers in there now instead of just building for expansion later?
Well, as I mentioned, we were under the impression, I think all of us, that the existing council chambers was going to remain here. That question was brought up by us early on, and I think the budget was an issue. Like I said, to build this, we would have had to take another 400 square feet, and we'd have had to dedicate that space strictly for council. These millwork is not easily moved out. If you need to do a classroom's atmosphere environment, it would be a pretty big task to take that out, build it all in movable furniture. So the need wasn't there at the beginning, and we felt it would be better to utilize that space on a more regular basis, which would be for training and internal employee meetings. I understand that they're going to try to do weekly meetings with a full staff. The planning and development will take one side, and the administration side will take the other side. So they'll be able to utilize those meeting rooms at the same time, at any time during the week. And the smaller conference rooms in the front are more for the public that would maybe need to meet with planning and development or meet with a group or a department on the admin side. They'd be able to reserve those conference rooms and use it more in a business sense rather than for the council chambers.
Well, would it be cheaper to build a standalone council chamber then? Because I think you said there was room for standalone buildings.
There is room for standalone building. To say that probably wouldn't be accurate because you'd have to have new restrooms. You wouldn't be able to double up on the restrooms. You'd have to have its own restrooms, its own lobby. So you'd have to have some doubled up spaces. It would be less square foot to do it in this building, but on the other hand, you're dedicating strictly a lot of space, basically 2,000 square feet for just council meetings. But if that's the desire, that can always be done. 3 years from now, we can actually take out 2 of those smaller conference rooms and build a larger chambers than we have now.
Okay. Mr. Dawson?
Just to add a little bit on that, there was a considerable discussion about, what would happen, if there was a need to move the council chambers into the area. That was about almost 6 to 8 months, maybe even, several months planning of what was going to happen here in very detailed design. So the goal was that with the capability of the expansion of the building, that when the time came, that we would be able to adjust the council chamber in the conference area that David just said, or do whatever we need to build something standalone, or just kind of push it out from the area that we currently have. As he said, that the goal was to make sure that we kept the cost in the same vicinity that we were by utilizing the same infrastructure of bathrooms and those kind of things in the current building. So we do have the capabilities to make that expansion when the time is needed.
Okay. Anyone else? Thank you, sir.
And I just want to say thanks to Mr. Martinez, Ken Dawson, and Michael Petty and the entire staff. They've been really very good to work with. They've been very helpful to get us through this process. We asked a lot of questions to get all the details ironed out, and there was very quick to respond and always giving us helpful answers to get from where we started to where we are now.
Okay. We have one more question from Councilman Sowerly.
Yes, sir. One more question about the parking. Now at the rear of the building, the red parking, which looks like that's for staff and so forth, in the rear left hand of the building where planning would be, there seems to be like a corridor that leads to a blind window, and then the 2 other corridors to the right of it actually look like they open to the outside, and if I look on another drawing, it looks like a sidewalk would connect those two to a parking lot. I'm wondering why a sidewalk wouldn't connect that 3rd corridor directly to parking, so that if I was a staff member parking my car way over there and I wanted to go to the...
Which entrance are you
I'm
talking?
looking on the site plan, page
Right.
2 of your handout, that one, right.
Is it on this side?
Well, it's backwards to me, so it would be on the the planning side, where you're gonna put the planning.
Okay.
Okay? The corridor that goes all the way to the back of the building, it looks like it's
Okay,
it's
that,
blunt,
that's
doesn't it?
actually, yeah, that does go to a window right now.
Right.
And that's actually
And
where
I'm
we
wondering why
have
you
a-
wouldn't make a sidewalk from there to the parking area.
Well, we didn't want a whole lot of,
You didn't wanna
control
cut-
points.
You didn't want to cut up the green space?
Well, no, it was more about control points. Everywhere, every time we put an access, you got access control, you got another entry point to worry about for security. So these guys have two exits that they can go to with a third one down here. So putting a fourth one would have been redundant at this point. But we do have a planned future expansion on that side where we would take that window out and continue the corridor back.
Well, I understand control points, but I'm also worried a little bit about, fire safety and things of that nature.
Well, it definitely
One
is-
more exit's always good,
definitely meets
depending on where the
or
fire
exceeds
occurs inside the
codes.
building and what corridor. If I want to get out real quick, and I'm Ricky Compton back there, I could, I don't know which one of those could be his office, I could just jump right to the back, but, although it does look like, correct me if I'm wrong, the parking to the left of the building, looks like if you go further down that other corridor, all the way to the leftmost side, looks
That's
like there's a
right.
door over there as well. Little teeny door, it looks like.
There's a door here.
Like move about an inch to the left of where the window is we're just discussing.
Yeah, right here. That
Right.
corner
That's-
that is an exit.
Right. So you can at least get out there.
Yeah, that's one of their exits. The front exit is here. The third exit would be this direction.
Just, friendly suggestions.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Councilman Kluat.
I want to take this opportunity to thank you from the first time, remember when we went walk it and just say, what are the
Yes, sir.
possibilities with the other building? And, and that didn't come to be, but it's going to be a nice building. And I'm proud that Ascension Parish government's going to get a good building like that, put everybody in.
The other thing, we have a morgue there, it's still operating, and we've sometimes go there and there's a body in the morgue, they pick it up, and so it's, we've cut a deal with St. Elizabeth to do our morgue, doing the morgue business with us, and we're actually gonna buy whatever it is that they, the refrigerated drawer or whatever it is, and we're gonna deal with St. Elizabeth on that, and they're gonna work with us, and we've worked with Dr. Fresh on it in the coroner's office, so anyway, that's all gonna work out.
All right.
We'll be leaving the presentation board here if y'all want to look at it afterwards, a little closer. And Mr. Martinez has a full set of the drawings at his office if y'all want to get more detail.
Great. Thanks for your work, Dave. It's looking good.
Thank you.
Mr. President, do you have anything for the Parish President's report?
No, I don't.
Okay. With that, we'll move on the consent agenda.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Motion by Councilman Todd Lambert, second by Councilman Kluat. Any objections? Consent agenda is adopted. Item number 8 is an approval for the Mental Health Department to solicit quotes and purchase malpractice insurance at a competitive rate for the year 2014.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Motion by Councilman Todd Lambert and second by Councilman Dempsey Lambert. Any discussion? Any objections? That motion passes. We'll move to item number 9, which is an amendment to the intergovernmental agreement for the Assessor's Office Aerial Imagery and Technology. Deputy Assessor Champlin sent an email about this. They're also here for questions. Chair would entertain a motion or just.
I would like a little information on it, 'cause
Discussion, okay.
If they want to come up and kind of explain what's going
Mr.
on
Assessor.
here.
Good afternoon, thank y'all. As you know, we were here a few months ago and signed an intergovernmental agreement, and things are going well. Our flight pictometry, the company that's doing the flight, finally got to finish. With all the bad weather, they couldn't do it. So they did get to finish it, and we're starting to receive some sample information from them, and it looks very good. It looks like we're going to be able to do everything that we said we were going to be able to do. The reason I'm here tonight is very simple. What we're trying to do is we felt that what we are requesting right now should have been in the original scope. It should be part of the original scope of the agreement. And what we need to do actually is to hire a firm to audit the salt caverns that we have in the parish. Right now, they're paying no taxes, and there's a considerable windfall that will be made for that, and so we need professional help. We don't have anybody in our office. The tax commission cannot do that, and several other parishes throughout the state has done this already, and in other states it's been done, and the local governments are certainly using the benefits of it. But I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have. I'll tell you what, let me get Justin up, and Justin will explain the salt caverns to you. It takes just a few minutes.
Just a quick question, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Smiley. Specifically, I mean, the salt caverns is one, you've heard about these things, in Assumption on the news. In the state of Louisiana, there's 14 parishes that have these type of, it's a natural phenomenon, which is a geological salt deposit underneath the earth, or salt dome. And the companies take fresh water, they drill into the salt, take fresh water, they pump fresh water in there to pull out the brine or the salt water at that time. As they do that, they create a cavity inside of these salt caverns, into the salt domes to create a salt cavern. And the larger that they become, eventually they stop to what the size that the capacity that they look at, that they're wanting. And in the process of doing that, and once it's done, they use those for storage of natural gas, for liquefied petroleum gases, crude oil, any product that they can pump in and out of there. It's a storage tank that is underneath the ground. They're just building underneath the ground and not above the ground. And it's very significant. 10 of the ones in the Sorrento area have been existing before 1970. So these things it's not something that's new or undeveloped. It's a long history with what they are, and they're continually, looking at, how can they improve and do those, storage of these products in a way that, it's very extremely cost efficient for them. And truthfully, Ascension Parish is really the last one, to the party when it comes down to looking at these as putting them as a taxable asset on the assessment roll. And of the 14 parishes that are in Louisiana, there's really only about 3 or 4 left that do not have them on. And I know that two of those right now are still in the same communications that we're having right now with an appraisal firm to come in to do those professionally. And they're so significant, they're so big, in the age of these. The best way to do it is, number one, let's have a third party do a professional appraisal on what the value of these things are, because nobody that I know, would really have a very good idea about it, but somebody that has done this already, multiple times would be a very good choice, in our situation to get a good value. And, if it is disputed at that point, well, then the person disputed can get their own appraisal done as well from another company. We can compare those at that point. But then we can have a true discussion, on what the valuation of the salt caverns are. But for going from nothing to something, they have to go on to the rolls, and we just want to do it in the right way, in the most fairest way possible for these companies.
Okay, Councilman Kluwat.
Yeah. Justin, you and I talked extensively on the phone earlier last week on this. You said that basically we have 4 scenarios here in Ascension Parish?
For operators?
4 operators?
Yes.
Who are they?
The 4 operators are Motiva, Shell, Exxon, and Chevron.
Okay.
And all that information is on
Yeah.
the Saunders website. If you go to Department of Natural Resources, you can Google Louisiana salt domes, and you'll find the maps and all the information on it.
So you're basically looking to get an appraisal on their salt domes, the capacity of their salt domes, and the capacity or the volume of whatever that product they have stored in it.
The appraisal will consist of the salt cavern itself, the surface equipment, and the inventory.
And you're just looking at salt caverns? You're
Just
not looking at anything else on that?
Well,
No injection
the
wells?
surface equipment is the injection wells.
Sir?
The injection wells is the surface equipment tied to those salt caverns.
But we have other injection wells other than salt
Well, we have,
Within the
you know,
chemical
the
industry.
parish, there's oil wells and injection wells to the parish, so, we're not, the appraisal would not encompass, outside of salt caverns.
Or yes, okay.
In other
Not
words,
right
is-
now, but are you anticipating looking at injection wells? Because we have some that operate within the
Well,
chem plants.
just like any other property, we'd have to, revalue
You
the
said
properties
yes,
over
Mert?
time.
You said yes?
saying we have to do it by law.
Yeah.
I mean, underneath the Louisiana Constitution, we're required to revalue property over a certain period of time, and obviously, that's just like any other property in the parish.
All right. So you're saying that none of the volume of the product is now on the books? Or,
There's-
and none of the salt domes on the books?
Limited inventory, it's believed to be, there's two assessments that we have reported for inventory for two of the operators that I know for a fact. The others there's no clear picture right now.
So you're saying
And-
that they're not reporting it, you have others that are not reporting any inventory?
They may be reporting it, but I don't know if it's tied to a salt cavern or not.
Okay. It may just be part of their
It could-
inventory, just
could be
like,
just-
yeah, they're not telling you tank
It could be a group-
109.
Yeah,
It may be part of their volume.
it could be a group of
inventory.
everything, at that point. Lumpy
So-
dumpy.
And you're also looking at the equipment that goes along with that as capital improvements, right? As you're looking at all this as capital
Yeah.
improvement to the land?
Those would follow through with the tax commission guidelines on assessing surface equipment, oil and gas
Within
equipment.
the taxing authority on capital improvements, do they have the ability to take a depreciation on it?
Yes. I mean, they say that's all in the guidelines of how to assess, the injection wells.
Have you been in contact with the 4 users?
Not closely, no. I mean, I'll usually get in touch with them probably in the next month with the lat forms, the personal property reporting.
All right. So you hadn't requested any information, them based on the size of their salt dome or the volume of their salt dome?
That capacity is actually shown on the Department of Natural Resources website.
Okay.
And you're looking at millions of barrels of capacity. And, I mean, the two natural gas wells, you're looking at a capacity of close to 6.5 million barrels. One of the operators has over, 10 million barrels of capacity. Another one has over, another 10 million barrels. Another one has over 5 to 6 million barrels of capacity.
Yeah.
It's a lot of, it's a big cavity to store
Sure.
something.
So, on some of the litigation that's going on, I know within your email you had referenced St. Landry Parish.
And they're one, right. December 18th, they had a Third Circuit Court of Appeal decision which basically upheld the trial court's decision that salt caverns should be assessed as commercial improvements upon the land. And that decision is not, say, inconsistent with neighboring states. Writs have been issued to the Supreme Court of Louisiana, and basically waiting to see if it's going to be a writ denied or if the Supreme Court's going to take it up. But the Supreme Court of Texas, rendered an opinion that salt caverns are improvements, and basically the same situation of you invest all this money, had you put this on top of the ground where you could see it, you would assess it as an improvement. If it's under, why would you treat it differently when it's more economical to do it below? And, from Mississippi, a 1993 Mississippi Attorney General opinion, basically said that these are commercial improvements, and that was upheld in a separate decision by the Supreme Court of Mississippi in 1998. So this is not anything new. It's new to us because it hasn't been, handled and dealt with in the past. But for the rest of the world, this is not the first time that it's been, looked at. And truthfully, it's our job now, to do this in the right manner, do it fairly, try to get the best valuation, and then work with the operators at that point to get a true, a fair value, for these.
Okay. And if they go to litigation, who bears the burden of that? Cost of the special, we'd probably have to have special counsel.
Yeah, that'd have to be,
You can't send just anybody to litigate this.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, it's a whole different, ballgame. But that's an issue that we would do everything possible not to get to that point. But in the situation that it does, it would be required, the burden is borne by all the taxing bodies who receive a millage
Right.
in the proportion of what their millage is in that situation. And, you know, the truth is that, you know, if this were to go to that situation, you know, the amount of money that's being missed out on revenue, you know, would easily, you know, it would not be a huge burden upon, you know, all the taxing bodies in that situation. And considering the fact that would open the door in that situation to look at, you know, whether or not, you know, we want to pursue back taxes, you know, for the past 3 years in that situation. And, but until then, we have no intentions, you know, we want to do it fairly, put it on like, just like these houses that, you know, and these commercial improvements and all these other things that we're going to discover, you know, with the use of the aerial imagery, you know, that we're going to find, we would treat it the same way. You know, it's a fair thing. It's our job to discover it, our job to list it, our job to value it. You know, but sometimes you need help, and this is the time where we're asking for help.
So basically, you don't see any value in waiting for the Supreme Court decision?
It won't make any difference.
It make no difference on this level of what you're talking
It-
about right there?
The waiting is not going to get you a value on these things. All you're doing is, you know, you'd be delaying, you know, what would eventually is going to happen anyway.
Yeah. What do you expect the total cost of this effort?
The total cost for the contract,
Yeah.
it's going to be $40,000 a year, which is for the appraisal to be done. A total about $80,000, roughly. And that's consistent with other parishes that I've intently questioned, you know, other assessors on what they paid, how many salt caverns they have, and everything else, and it's within line with two of the parishes that have similar number of salt caverns and such. And then, you know, accordingly, those have had less and one that had more, you know, it's within that range.
Yeah, just to make it clear, you're not, it's within your department to do this. It's within your task by law that you should do this. So you're not here looking for any kind of permission or anything. You want to realign the money that
We're
the
looking to
different
broaden the
taxing bodies
purpose.
had gave you for that project.
We're looking to broaden the purpose of the agreement to encompass the idea that we can use the project funds toward the cost of hiring a professional to come do an appraisal on salt caverns. It's not asking for, this is not at all asking for additional money, and for anything else you've already contributed, you know, to this. And we're asking to use what we have toward this, which is, it makes a lot of sense.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you,
I
ma'am.
have a few with questions, Mr. President.
I'm
and
going to go
Dempsey.
back to the 70s again and 60s, and when these injection wells were actually being utilized. And let's just say someone has some salt domes that they used back then, and they're not using them now. Are they taxable, the ones that we used then?
That's another question that I don't know yet. But that's something that I've presented as well to the appraiser that we've been in discussions with. And, you know, because he initially sent the contract, you know, said these are wells. I said, but what about ones that may be discovered, you know, in the process of doing the appraisal? What about the ones that are existing that may be, you know, are those actually taxable or not? We don't know.
Well,
There's a lot of questions.
That's the
you know.
question I have. If we got 20 salt domes and we're only using 10, correct?
Right.
Is what you're saying?
It's kind of like peeling back an onion. You know, the more you pull one back, the more layers you get, and, you know, all of a sudden you have a.
So what, can I ask one quick question? Just clear up for everybody. We got people watching also. So in other words, if that's an underground storage tank, if you've got somebody that's got an above-ground storage tank and it's empty, you still got to tax them on the value of the storage.
That tank still has value.
That's what I'm saying. Make
Okay.
it clear.
Okay, Councilman Dempsey Lambert, then Councilman Tyler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And that's what I was wanting. The above-ground storage, Justin, do we have, I know we're looking strictly at the underground caverns, but what, is it in St. Mary what parish has the above-ground that y'all trying to compare it to? Or do y'all have any ideas what those values bring in for the above-ground storage?
You're talking, when you say above-ground storage,
You talking about underground.
you're,
I know we're talking about
you're
the
talking about salt
underground,
caverns, other salt caverns.
But there are some that's taxable that in other parishes, they above ground.
Well, that's listed as personal property for
Okay.
storage tanks.
So we don't have an idea what, if, the above ground would be.
Well, there's not going to be any above-ground tanks that we're looking at here. Those are reported on personal property and assessed that way.
I'm just
In
trying
other
to
words,
get-
I could go through, all the industrial plants on the river right now, and they all have above-ground tanks, and they all report those on the personal property renditions, annually.
I'm just trying to get
Yeah.
a value here. What underground, are we gonna, whenever they come back with this, the underground cavern, what are we looking at as far as the value of these four?
Well, we don't know.
You know,
I have a projection, only because I'm looking at what other parishes have done, and I tried to get the lowest possible projection that I could, even if I just scrapped it to where it's almost nothing, what I thought they would be worth. And then I tried to give you an idea what it could be, and even then, we don't know. It could end up being a total of increase of taxable value for the parish for 30 million. It could be toward 120 million. I try to give you what would be a fair range of that situation. It could be, end up being, a total increase of, taxable value of 50 million. But it also could end up being 150 million. There's no way to know. The values, the LPG storage and the natural gas storage tanks, not tank, but the salt caverns are worth more than the brine wells. And, at that point, the brine wells have a different value because of the pipes and everything that goes into those. They're much larger pipes that they use. But once you have the salt caverns doing what they do for storage of LPG or for natural gas, the value of those are much more significant. At that point, too, they hold, two different layers of gas that's in there. You're going to have the base working gas, and you're going to have you're going to have the base gas and the working gas, which the base gas always has to be there for pressurizing it to allow you to push, material in and out of the cavern. And, but, as I say, is all that's being reported now just the working gas? Is it a portion of the base gas? We don't know.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of questions that, you can easily get into, the more and more you talk about it. And I have to say, for the past 3 months, we've done our due diligence trying to find out the best information. And by doing that, we have no other logical conclusion but say this is the right thing to do, number one for the parish, and number one for, trying to work with and deal with, the fact that they're not on fairly.
Well, and Mr. Cloardi, the notification to these companies, that needs to be.
Well, that's all part of it.
First and foremost, because we're coming into some new territory here with this.
Well, the whole purpose is say, they're going to be notified, but, once an appraiser is hired, then we've sent out letters to say this, we've hired this company, this is what they're going to be looking at, this is what they're going to be doing. And it's a whole procedural step point at that point. And if you haven't been reporting these things since the 1950s, at that point, what else are you going to get?
Okay. Councilman Todd Lambert?
Yeah, like Randy and Dempsey touch bases on the four companies that you're looking at. They got technology to tell you how much fuel or how much is in them salt domes. And I thought, as far as you hiring an appraiser to tell you that, I think maybe you should have contacted them four vendors, because I don't see why they wouldn't give you the information, because they have, every gallon, every pound that they put in these salt domes, they have records of it. They have documentation of it. They have, instruments to tell you exactly how much is in there. But there, you wanting to pay, appraiser, 80,000 plus maybe, to do this.
The value's not in the inventory.
I've been on board 14 years, and from the assessor's office, very seldom did we have them come to us asking for funding for different, they usually handle it with their own budget also. So I'm just curious on that also.
In all the parishes that have done this at this point, I do have confirmation that every single assessor that this was a group thing with the parish, with all the taxing bodies and everyone that used Pritchard, and everyone that's used Pritchard Ave that I'm aware of at this point. And one thing that I also say, and you're right, yes, they have inventory, they're going to, but then you're talking about inventory. I'm talking about the salt cavern itself, the capacity of it. How does it compare to another one? What does the value compare at that point? The crux of the appraisal is the salt caverns. The inventory and the surface equipment is really to make sure, basically to put it It's a check to say, are you reporting it correctly? And if you're not, what are you not reporting that should be shown correctly? And
I guess we need to
and
have
it-
a little trust, you know, with our
well,
major companies, you know.
And
us.
think about it too. I mean, and you may not have known this or not, but inventory is actually reimbursed by the state through the tax returns. So you may pay inventory on a personal property tax bill in December, but you get reimbursed for the inventory in May, once you file your state tax return. So, at this point, you talk, it's not really that big of an issue, but if they are underreporting inventory, it may be an additional cost for them, but they're also getting it back. And
Okay.
That's all I got, Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Satterley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I understand, sir, your testimony up to this point, specifically to Councilman Kluart, you're really just asking our permission to use existing funds that we gave you to do this aerial imagery.
well, you've already done the aerial. That was what the project was.
Let me finish this way. But now you want to take some of that funding and apply it toward looking not from the sky but under the ground in the salt caverns or domes or whatever the proper term is here. It sort of implies, playing the devil's advocate, that we gave you maybe too much, and that you have a surplus. Is that incorrect thinking?
We applied and received a grant that we did not anticipate we were going to receive. And in return, we actually anticipated doing a refund, once we had whatever was remaining, in the account at that situation. But at the same time that the grant was received, it was almost like, basically, this all was coming together at the same time. And once we realized what it is, instead of having to ask for it again, separately ask for, basically a check to pay for this, it made a lot of logical decisions. You've already paid, the parish government paid $36,000, toward the project. But of our efforts even last year physically doing the work on the ground, you received over and above that. Just the parish tax itself read over $230,000 of increase, from 2012 to 2013. And of course, you look at all this and say, why should we have to do it again? Why should we? We're basically saying, let us use what we have instead of having to ask for it again and have to basically request it in that situation.
Mr. Chairman, I have a follow-up. If this council were to say no tonight, state law, you said, requires you to do this anyway, right?
We're going to put it on.
Apparently haven't been doing it maybe at all or as completely. I'm kind of confused there myself, as we should. So you would be compelled, and you would therefore have to find this money in your budget, and you'd be doing it.
No.
If we said no,
We would have
you'd
to,
go against state
we would
law?
end up having to just figure out the best way to put a value on these things.
Right, but you would still be doing something. You just wouldn't be able to hire this appraiser, you're telling me.
It wouldn't be a
Your
professionally
budget's so
done.
tight that if this council doesn't give you the freedom to use the money we've already given you for another purpose, for this purpose, you would still go ahead and try to tax these four entities the best you can.
The best I can, with the best, and get the best information, possible, and
And so you don't have the money in your budget to do this?
no.
Okay.
We
thank
don't
you.
have a very big budget.
I'm just asking.
Councilman Schexnayder?
Thank you. Couple things. Thank y'all for looking into this, by the way. I think, these things need to be done. I appreciate that. The only thing, something seems to be missing here. You said that you just completed aerial photos.
Yes.
Okay. And due to the weather and all, which means that you hadn't utilized that system yet to find new taxable things. But then you said we got $236,000 more because of this program.
Well, we started the program by physically going out on the ground last year.
Well, I mean, you would
When
have, okay, you would have done that, though. That's not part
But
of the
that,
aerial.
and that's the purpose of doing it for the aerial imagery project, was to have pictometry come in, do a full flight, 3-inch imagery of the entire parish, which then that we would come back and we were sketching. We're in the process of starting receiving the sketches of improvements of every single parcel, in the parish. And, so that obviously is going to take time to sift through all of it. But on the other hand, instead of taking a project that may take physically, 5, 6, 7, 8 years to do, we're going to be able to do this within a relatively short period of time. And it makes a lot of sense, and it gives you information, you get square footage, you're going to get a sketch of the property. And
Your statement to us tonight was implying that the money we spent, $36,000, was directly responsible for the $230-something thousand that we got.
Yeah,
back.
if you remember back in August, when we initially presented this, we showed you the fact that, number one, we are doing our effort to do what we can to find properties.
Yeah.
And so that way, whenever, you may be paying a check in January, but we should be able to find enough revenue to cover the cost of what you're paying and receive extra. In your case, yes, we have done that already, and we're continually going to do that. And truthfully, I'm not going to be shocked about how much increase it's going to be once we find once we find these improvements and put them on the assessment rolls to be assessed. I mean, the two samples, I got a sample of about 8 initially to see, number one, is this how we want the sketching and all that. Of the 8 samples, 2 were not on the rolls. So I mean, and those were randomly picked. Had no idea about it.
I have no doubt that if we look, we're going to find.
We're going to, it's going to be discovered, from that standpoint.
I just want to say that we appreciate you guys doing that. I mean, that's a very positive thing. And
we're just trying to do our job the best way.
I just want to get a handle of that. If we wouldn't have, given that, if all the taxing indices wouldn't have given that money, we wouldn't have received any more money.
You still would have gotten money because we'd still have been doing it.
By normal means.
It's going to take a lot longer for us to do the job.
Okay. Now, a couple questions. On the designated industrial, these people that you're talking about came to us before and asked us to be rezoned. And one of the things I think is in the assessor's advantage and the parish advantage for us assessing it, which I agree on, is that they came before us in planning commission and everything and asked to be rezoned for industrial use. And so that land was actually rezoned to be able to use it for industrial use. So obviously there's some type of value, and they knew there was a value there. So I mean, that's one thing that make sure the general public knows that they did come to the parish and asked to be rezoned for their uses, and thought it was important. And then the other thing is, are we now assessing, or do you have enough information to know whether we're assessing injection wells and petroleum wells and all now?
Just what's being reported at this point.
So
self-reported. To the self-reporting forms.
So this would be some kind of way, is this going to also be used to look at some of that too? I mean, is that going to help you guys?
It will actually help us from the standpoint of being able to go through the other ones at some point, and it'll give us a base to work with, and kind of a guidelines.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that's an under-assessed.
And we don't have a lot of wells in the parish. I mean, most of the wells, it's very limited compared to other parishes that have tremendous amount of oil and gas.
Well, with new technology and all that, it may change, and then the other thing. And it's a concern, and we talked about it in the past. The issue now with increased flood costs, flood insurance costs. Is the average person that receives an increased flood cost, like I talked to a business person the other day, and flood insurance was costing right at almost $10,000, and it went up double. And they said if it goes up another penny, they got to get out of business. So their building devalued, their business devalued. Are we taking that into account as we go in assessments now?
It's funny that you bring that up, because Mr. Smiley and I had that same conversation today, that we were very mindful, number one, of the flood insurance issues that present in the parish, and we definitely know that those are things that could potentially affect values of properties in the parish as well. And, we will handle those, in those situations to make sure that, that they're being treated favorably, in the situation of still within the guidelines that we're supposed to work with, But in the situation where we know that these are flooded properties that are affected by it and those issues that are there, we're going to treat them fairly.
So an
And
individual that would be affected by that would just need to come by and
they
visit?
come by, visit. We are mindful of what, what areas and,
Okay.
and where those, properties are located generally. And, it's not a perfect science, from that standpoint, but from the standpoint of being mindful for, should that really become a significant issue, despite that, the efforts that like Congressman Cassidy has made with the, amendment that just got officially, delaying it, for a year. But I mean, how long is it going to be delayed before it becomes a real issue again, before the Congress actually deals with it? And I know there's real issues that, I know Mr. Kluwat has been very involved in the council has been, and I know Mr. Martinez. And, but we all know that those are real issues that we have to be aware of, and we are. And we know that, the situation where it does start tremendously affecting the values of properties in the parish, because if somebody cannot resell their house, because they're no longer grandfathered in, or they, their premiums go from, paying, $500 a year in flood insurance to $5,000 a year in flood insurance. Well, the value of their properties have changed, and we need to, to adjust accordingly in that situation. But we definitely will work with each individual in that situation, should they be in that situation.
And again, thank you for looking into this. I think that's something that needs to be done. Thank you.
Councilman Kluwat.
Real quick, Justin, while you moved to the aerial, just for everybody to know, you'd said that we've already seen increase in revenue based on the input that each of the tax entities have put in. Can you tell us really quick, I mean, what we got, a couple mills for the parish, how many mills going to the sheriff, and how many is going to the school board? That's the two of the big ones.
From a percentage standpoint.
From a percentage standpoint
Yes, of the total millage.
of the school board receives probably close to about 60% of the total mills. Sheriff will probably be about 14-ish. Library is probably about 6 or 7. And after that, it's all
just waters
proportion.
down.
Yeah, it's
And ours is,
2.86
Yeah,
is the
down
parish.
the bottom,
And in the city of Gonzales and city of Donaldsonville, it's half. It's 1.43. Ours is 1.85. Mental health is 1.5. Health is 1.5. Council on Aging is 2. They're all very small with that situation, and either broken up. And a lot of the bigger increases say those that have all of East Ascension, definitely, would see a significant increase.
right.
And this is something that, it's hard to say, how much increase are you going to get by our efforts, but, we have to do our job, and do it right, and treat everybody fairly and equitably over time. And, but, truthfully too, is, we can't take a full antiquated role and flip it overnight. We have to slowly, work with what we have, to put it into a better situation, a better system that will abide by, the laws that are in place for us to assess property.
Yeah, and just real quick, you said, bringing in the new money with the aerial, and that's cool. But, do you have any idea what the split is? Is say if we brought it up $5 million total, what's the split? What's the industry? Where you find your offenders? Are you heavy reassessments really moving up? Is it in residential, commercial, industrial? Where's your big percentage at?
That was another discussion we had about an hour ago, and about how we're putting into place a structure of how to basically monitor what we're going to find. And most of what you're going to find really is going to be in the residential and commercial arena, and only because a lot of times the permits weren't picked up. The buildings, new construction was done, and it was missed. And and that, don't know why, don't know how. We're not trying to go look at the past. We're saying let's take the information we have and move forward, and and start correcting the things that are that are not right in our role.
So you mean not in dollars, but in percentages of their tax roll moving up? You feel like that it's going to probably be the residential's going to see the biggest move in their percentage of what they're paying now?
No,
That's what
I can't say
you're
that. I mean,
You said most of them in resident,
there's there's plenty of, the two that I was talking about earlier, that the samples were both commercial buildings.
Yeah.
And, yeah, and one was a smaller commercial, it was about 1,500, square foot. The other was, it was larger, it was close to 3,000 square foot, but you go back on Google Earth and you do the timeline back on it, and I looked at it, and it's like, well, gosh, these things have been here, 6 years.
Yeah.
And, you look at it, and it's like, well, why? But, instead of asking the why, I said, okay, we know that we have this, that we got to deal with it.
Yeah, that's good. And just to recap, my conversation I had with you is basically your whole effort right here, tonight, today, is basically that you told me that you're, I think Doc or somebody had touched on it earlier, basically within you and Mert, the assessor's office, that you don't have any money for those type of projects, that all your money goes to payroll and overhead.
Yes.
That's what you had told me.
Yes.
You don't have any money.
We don't have,
If you want to go
We don't
do
have special
something,
money.
you don't have any money.
we don't have special project money, just, that we could use randomly for any project that we want.
So 100% of your, what you collect goes into payroll and overhead.
Payroll and overhead. Office expenses. Well, insurance retirement. Huh? Oh, well, no.
Well, all are, I said 100%, and I apologize for hitting
No,
that
put it-
dead percentage, but you said all your money basically goes into payroll and overhead.
Payroll, say retirement insurance,
Yeah.
ordinary office expenses.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. President.
Two questions. If you valued these domes at $100 million, let's say, what would that mean to the entities? Let's say the school board gets 62 mills. On $100 million, what does that mean that's taxable?
So, in other words, for taxable
Now,
value.
you say these domes are
Yep.
worth $100 million. So how much more money would that bring to the parish? I'm
When-
trying to make it even.
And just so I can do my math real fast for you.
Yes.
When you say 100 million, that would be for fair market value
That's
or
what
for
you
assessed value?
assessed them at.
Assessed value.
Yes.
In other words, so that would end up being like 100 million would be of assessed value. You're gonna make me do math here. And while I'm doing math, for the stuff that we are going to find for improvement wise, in the parish, we are putting in a procedure that, when we do find a improvement, we are going to send a letter, with a copy of the sketch to the owner of that property. So that way they would be aware of, what we're adding, and give them an opportunity to basically, if something may be incorrect or whatever, then they can review it at that point. No, I can't do this one in my head.
Well, we're about 2%, right? Probably.
6.1 million.
So if you value it at that 6.1 divided amongst.
Well, that would be just for the school board. That's what you asked. If you're,
We would get 1/30th of that.
1/30th of that. No, 2.86.
yeah, if you don't get into the drainage, but
Drainage,
it's about 300,000,
Different
just for
different
the parish itself.
Uh,
Not
and-
including all the rest of them.
And the other thing, we talked at 20 salt caverns, okay, when we talking about valuing those are the ones that, the 10 that you're talking about or whatever in Sorrento, those are the ones that are actually working caverns.
They're existing right now.
Now,
Well-
the other 10 exist, but there's nothing going on in them.
No, there's 20 being used,
So,
20 active.
okay, so there's 10 in Sorrento, where's the other 10?
No, there's 20 in Sorrento.
Okay. All right. I just want to make sure that I understand. If I got a salt cavern under my house,
No,
I don't want you to charge me, because that salt cavern under there, it's a storage tank.
Well, you may want to move because they may be worth more.
So, anyway, but those are scenarios that could happen, if you look at this thing.
Okay.
thank you, Jeff.
Any other?
Any other discussion? This time the chair would entertain a motion. Any motion from the floor? All right then, hearing none, that item, we will deny that item, I guess, and move forward. Item number 10, approval of contract renewal for Allied Waste for dumpster rental and disposal at various locations around the parish in the amount of $90,500.
The original contract on this was for 3 years. The renewal was not originally added to the yearly contract listing, and Allied Waste has continued to provide the services. So we recommend the approval of the first year renewal so that they may be paid for the services they provided.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, a motion by Councilman Todd Lambert.
Second.
Second by Councilman Satterley. Any discussion? Any objections? That motion passes. Item number 11 is the capital outlay for Lamar Dixon Expo Center Recreational Complex. Mr. President, or Ms. Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the council. At the last legislative session, we were awarded funding for the capital for Lamar Dixon Recreation Complex. 300,000 of it is already allocated, and what I'm here tonight is to ask for a resolution to authorize the parish president to sign the contract or anything pertaining to this for the purpose of the recreation complex in the amount of 300,000, and Ms. Gwen LeBlanc for the financial.
Make that motion.
Okay, motion by Councilman Todd Lambert, second by Councilman Kluwat. Discussion? Any objections? That motion passes. Item 12 is Oak Grove Community Center improvements. Ms. Collins, you have this as well?
Right. Mr. Mueller is sick with the flu, and so I'm here pitching in for him. This is a change order for Oak Grove Community Center improvements. It's for some unforeseen delays. When the project started, they had to encounter, there was asbestos, so we had to allow for that remediation on that. We ended up adding the sewer treatment plant into the the plant itself, and there was some soil testing that needed to be done. So the change order is basically for additional $40,365 and an increase in the time to get this completed of an extra 89 days.
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Motion by Councilman Dempsey Lambert.
I second for discussion.
Okay, second by Councilman Joseph. Discussion, Councilman Todd Lambert.
Is that in our budget?
Yes, sir. Actually, the funding for that, when we originally started, there was funds left still in the capital outlay. And what we did is we went back and had this approved through the facility planning. And so I think there might be $1,000 that is actually coming out of recreation, but it's totally covered under in budget.
All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Councilman Satterley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Martha, when we originally authorized this, there wasn't a MODAD in the original project, or?
Mr. Sally, I am
You don't
sorry,
know.
I can't answer that, but I know that there was some type of sewer system that was included or was going to be done through another means, and then the plans changed a little bit. I can't tell you exactly. Maybe President Martinez can address that.
I can address it as best I can. Basically, we talked about bringing it to trailer land and adding that much, but it would cost a lot more to get the right-of-ways and to put the line there that far rather than putting the MODAD in, and then we can actually tie it into our, once 42, I mean, if 42 was ready to go, it wouldn't be a problem. But we're probably 4 years away from 42 being ready. So I didn't want to put a whole lot of money in the ground going that far with pipe and then have to just pick it up, so.
Thank you.
Great.
Okay.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Any objections? That motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're passing on 13 and 14. Item 15, introduction of an ordinance to revoke the existing 50-foot drainage servitude located on lots LJG-2-A-3-A-7 and LJG-2-A-3-A-8 of the LJG Land Company, LLC property. This was moved to council via UDC 17-4050B.2.A. Chair would entertain a motion to introduce.
So move.
A motion by Councilman Dempsey Lambert.
Second.
Second by Councilman Satterley. Any objection? That ordinance is introduced. We're passing on 16, and we'll move to 17, which is the reading of an ordinance DC 13-15, revisions to the Unified Land Development Code pertaining to light industrial development standards. Ms. Manda.
Whereas Ascension Parish is a local governmental subdivision as defined by Article 6, Section 44 of the Louisiana Constitution of 1974, and whereas the Parish of Ascension is the governing and responsible body within this jurisdiction, and whereas Article 6 of the Home Rule Charter of Ascension Parish, adopted May 4th, 1993, identifies the process and manner in which to adopt ordinances regulating the lands of this parish, and whereas this code was incorporated as Appendix 2 of the Parish Unified Land Development Code adopted December 17, 2009, be it ordained by the Ascension Parish Governing Authority that Section 17-2017 of the Ascension Parish Unified Land Development is hereby created as follows. These changes are adopted as follows. See Exhibit 1 attached.
Motion.
Motion to open public hearing by Councilman Tyler Lambert, second by Councilman Kluwat.
Motion to close.
That was passed. Motion to close by Councilman Joseph.
Second.
Second by Councilman Satterley. Motion to move the ordinance. Motion by Councilman Dempsey Lambert. Second by Councilman Kluwat. Discussion, Councilman Satterley.
Yes. Is someone here to speak on this? Maybe Mr. Compton or? Hey, while he's coming up to the mic, it looks to me in Exhibit A, and anyone can correct me if I'm wrong, the major changes involve multiple things, not the least of which loading docks, landscaping issues and so forth that formerly would, if we approve this, would have been under the purview of the Planning Commission. And the strike-through language and change that we're looking to do is let the planning and development staff to do this. And I believe, Mr. Compton, the reason that your group states is to expedite these matters and let them go quicker as opposed to delaying them at least another month or so by going through the commission instead of letting the planning department do it. Is that sort of accurate or close?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks. Now for the hard part. So as a former commissioner, we would have this thing called public comment period. If we make this change, how are we are cutting the public out of that process, correct? And it would just be up to you and your office to decide if the LI applicant, light industrial applicant, was complying with all the different issues.
Sure, but by code, these items don't require a public hearing anyway. These items were going to the commission just because the code said it had to go to the commission, but there was no public hearing required for those items.
Well, but even though it's not required, could the public in the past come and speak?
Sure, but since I've been here, there was never a public comment period that existed on any of those buildings.
I
where the
understand
public
that, but-
objected, because all this is a site plan, building plan review, that the staff can simply look at the package and say, yes, it meets code, or no, it doesn't. And if it doesn't meet code, the applicant will still have the option to
What-
go to the commission to question our decision. But at this point, we feel that landscaping, lighting, signage, and building standards can be reviewed by staff.
I guess my concern is even if it's not happening, the elimination of the potential for there to be public scrutiny doesn't sit the best with me. That's all I'm saying. I mean, I trust that, and actually, in many ways, you and your office may be better equipped to make these decisions than the commission itself. But as you know, that's an appointed body from this council, and although they wouldn't be making recommendations on these things back to us, we don't lose any power, so to speak, there. It would still go through a process that's, I don't know, maybe it's not tried and true and tested, or maybe that's why you're asking for a change. Obviously, it will be faster. But shy of that, I'm just not quite sure if I can support it without maybe more public intervention. Or, let me rephrase that, public involvement.
Councilman
Thank you.
Okay, Councilman Shakespeare.
Thank you. Yes, I was concerned about what Mr. Saturday was, saying also. I think everybody is, but I think this more or less, as we reviewed this, it come under the standing of an inspector going by and check and see the same thing that we do for a building. If you have your 2x6s on 16-inch centers, an parish inspector comes by and either okays it or do not. And so this is very similar. Either it meets the code that you have or it doesn't. And I don't think that we should be delaying something that should be as simple as that. And if these things are, if we see, just like we would do an inspection of homes, if we see a pattern of problems, then we can correct that systematically. But other than that, we need to streamline some of this in order for businesses and other people to get things done in a timely manner. So because of that, you know, I would like to see, you know, see that getting through with this. So I'm in agreement with it.
Okay, I had a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Any objections? One objection by Councilman Sowerly. Hearing that, hearing none others, that motion passes. Chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned, Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Todd Lambert, second by Councilman Kluwat. Objections, none, we are adjourned.